Hi, I'm Danielle, and welcome back to my channel where I talk about whatever it is I feel like. And today we have another Unwinding Thoughts because I saw Spider-Man. Even have a t-shirt. So this is truly the last movie that I saw in July. I saw it on Thursday, the 30th. I even got the popcorn tin. I saw Spider-Man Brand New Day on Thursday, so we're going to talk about this. I have no I didn't plan this out. I don't really plan out the unwinding thoughts if I'm being honest, because I'm just like talking at night basically. So I guess I'm gonna kind of go over my favorite how I felt about the movie. There's gonna be tons of spoilers. I'm so sorry if you didn't see it. Just maybe come back to this later. I'm going to talk about the movie and then I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the MCU in general leading up to Doomsday and I guess what I'm going to do to prepare for that because I am excited for Doomsday. So let's get into this. So the premise of Brand New Day is basically taking place after No Way Home when Peter makes that deal with Doctor Strange, or he has Doctor Strange use magic to make it so that nobody remembers that Peter Parker is Spider Man. And in doing so, he erases himself from pretty much everyone's memory. So he is disconnected from MJ and Ned. He lost his Aunt May in No Way Home as well. And Peter's just having a very bad time. And in addition to that, he's kind of going through a change like a spider would. I don't know the life cycle of a spider. I hate bugs. Let's not go it to me for like arachnid facts, but apparently there's like a life cycle of a spider, or at least in the movie, there's a life cycle of the spider where it's kind of this big metamorphosis that he's going through. And I think that coupled with him experiencing such a great loss and feeling even more isolated than ever, it really starts to have his powers go haywire as he starts to kind of have the levels of his mutation kind of change up. So he might be at like this human arachnid baseline, but slowly his arachnid side is getting a little bit stronger. I will say in previous Spider-Man movies, we've seen little inklings of this, like they called it the Peter Tingle in can't remember the movie, but they called it the Peter Tingle when he kind of like let his instincts take over and he was able to do those like incredible feats that are known in the Amazing Spider-Man comics. Um and even when he was confronting Doctor Strange in that weird mirrored dimension that he had him in, and he was able to like kind of beat him at his own game with physics, that was kind of Peter, but also I feel as though a little bit of the spider and his instincts taking over in that scenario. So in this movie, we're seeing how Peter is getting on by himself with Spider-Man being his main identity. I feel as though in the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, he kind of is pretty even or even leaning more towards Peter Parker in terms of his identity. We see a lot of him with his friends. We see a lot of him kind of trying to navigate his powers and the world while also having crushes and falling in love and wanting to maintain his good friendships and get into school. So I feel as though we've been very Peter heavy in the original or in the Tom Holland Spider-Man trilogy of the first three films. And then with Brand New Day, we're kind of breaking that trend up and we're seeing a lot more from a Spider-Man because he's isolated and he doesn't have any friends and he doesn't have any family. And let's never forget Tony Stark is dead. But because he doesn't have any like support systems at this point, he is just Spider-Man. I don't think he has a job. Yeah, I don't think he has a job. I think at least in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans, he was the reporter for the Daily Bugle, but here he doesn't even have a job. So he's just kind of like Spider-Man and he only ever talks to like the police chief. Let's see. What else can I say about the plot of this film? Besides Peter Parker going through this change, the big villain in this story is a psychic villain at this point, and we don't know who it is. and they basically are trying to get into the minds of everyone to uncover a secret. Like I said, these are going to be full of spoilers. So it's Jean Grey. She lost her sister and is trying to find her sister. Sarah Grey was able to use her psychic powers to telepathically send out a message to Jean, and the message was VMAX. And she is just trying to find her sister at this point. So she's using her telekinetic powers and almost like possessing people to get more information on her sister. And I think the thing that has changed with Marvel a little bit is a lot of times the government will be the big bad right now. So there is a department called the DODC, which uses the villains and the nuisances from around the city who Peter brings in and their technology, and their goal is to use those items for good. But wait, because they're a government agency, they're definitely have their own nefarious thing where why would we let this power get into someone else's hands who isn't our own? Why would we let someone have this power that's not us where we can control them? And because Jean Grey is a mutant, I think we're starting to see how the X-Men will be incorporated in the MCU with this DODC big bad right now. The other thing is Bruce Banner, the Hulk was in it. He he okay. So, I don't know what's going on with the Hulk in general just because I didn't watch She-Hulk, and last I saw him in like Endgame, it seemed as though Bruce Banner was able to be Professor Hulk and he kind of figured that part out. But now he has a suppressor on, and that means that he can kind of suppress the big guy and just be himself. And that's part of that. He could suppress himself, and that's part of it. I will say, I prefer no Professor Hulk, no just like weird Bruce Banner Hulk hybrid. I never liked that. So I'm happy he's just back to suppressing the other guy. Like, yeah. I think the main theme of this movie was the danger in suppressing part of yourself. Jean, um, she wasn't in danger because she was suppressing part of herself, but she was definitely had her guard up and her walls up because her parents had left her and her sister because they realized they were mutants, and just having to hide her power this whole time, suppressing it, and now that it's coming out, she's just really excited to take control for the first time in her life. Same with Peter Parker. He's suppressing these arachnid things that are happening to him and advancing his powers in a way. And because he's not being honest with himself about like, yeah, this change is really happening, I should just embrace it or at least figure something out, his immediate thought is like, okay, how can we not have this happen? How can we suppress it? And that's to his detriment. With the Hulk, that's been his thing the whole time. So same story, different day for Bruce Banner, I guess. I will say, I'm not a Marvel like nerd. I'm not someone who's well versed in the comics, and I haven't read every single thing, and I haven't seen every single part of the MCU. Like, I just haven't. So I'm just going off of the movies and what they're presenting to me in the movies, and of course some fan theories sprinkled in online because I love a fandom. I love being on Tumblr. Like, I love a fandom situation, so I'm always looking for those like little theories where people are bringing in their comic book knowledge and their extra knowledge. I'm always looking forward to that. But like me, myself, and I don't have that. I don't have that individually. Sorry. Let's talk about some scenes that I really loved. The scene with MJ and Peter, because before I get into the scene that I like, another thing that's going on is that if you remember from No Way Home, Peter made a promise to his friends that he would go and find them as soon as he lost his memory. He would be like, okay, I'm going to have Doctor Strange do the spell, and then I'm going to find you guys, and we'll be together again, basically. Of course, it would be different, but we're going to be together again. And you see at the end of No Way Home, him going up to MJ at that coffee shop and chickening out. He, like, wrote down that incredibly vulnerable letter and then just never gives it to her. So he's living with that decision of having to see his friends move on without him, and but still wanting to be with them, of course. They're his best friends and he remembers. They don't remember. So now that we have that context, one really amazing scene was when Jean Grey kind of threatens MJ. So Peter Parker Spider Man obviously goes running to her and basically takes her and is like, okay, I'm going to take you somewhere safe. And what he doesn't realize is in the middle of him doing that, Jean Grey takes over her mind and basically possesses her, and she kisses him. And just seeing the difference in mannerisms of when MJ's possessed and just the way she's talking to him was so ooky spooky, and I loved it so much. It was so freaking good. And then the kind of her jumping off of the building to be like, okay, bye, Peter, I'm gonna hurt you by, like, killing the love of your life, and just Peter like racing after her, and then Jean Grey ending her possession, and all of a sudden you just see MJ come back into herself, like, what just happened? Like, that was such a good scene. I really loved it. I also loved the final like showdown basically of Peter Parker fully embracing his, that's such a basic thing, but I love the final showdown of Peter Parker embracing his powers, and just his web shooters are broken, they no longer work, and he's like, okay, let me actually take off my suppressor and like really lean into the fact that I'm turning into a part spider. So he does that and he's able to defeat the big bad. He's able to go in and save Jean because she finds out that the DODC is not the good people that they claim to be, and that they're the ones who kidnapped her sister, and her sister died in their custody. that that was a brutal scene. That was a brutal scene when, because this entire time she's like, what is VMAX? What is VMAX? What is VMAX? And Peter Parker asks the DODC director, he's like, what is VMAX? And the guy keeps insisting, I don't know, I don't know. And I think this was an amazing twist. It was done so beautifully because we have both Peter and we have Jean Grey asking for VMAX because that's where Jean knows her sister to be. They're both asking, where is VMAX? And the director, who is a liar, he is a liar, but he's like, I don't know, I don't know. And this entire time you think he's lying. You think he's lying and he's going to just like all of a sudden open up something. But what happens is so much more sinister, and oh, it was so good. So basically, Jean Grey gets captured by these people. She's brought to their facility and they strip her and they like tie her down so that they can learn about her powers and learn about how she's doing these psychic jumps to possess people, and how to hopefully be able to duplicate that power and harness it for themselves. And they're like running these tests on her, and she's like they're hurting her as her mind is going haywire with these powers. She's strapped down, and then in that, her head like tilts up to the ceiling, and she sees on the ceiling there's a vent, and at the vent is Vector Max, because that's the company that makes the vent, but part of it has peeled, so you just see the VMAX. VMAX. He didn't know what VMAX was because it's not a real place. It's just this room that her sister is in, and she's just been calling it VMAX because that's all she can see when she looks up because they're hurting her. When Jean Grey comes to that realization, that that was a twist. That was very, very well done. Incredibly well done. Just her finding out about VMAX, you, the audience, realizing this liar is telling the truth, like a broken clock is right twice a day. That was so good. And then her fully unleashing her powers and then just basically putting a kilometer of New York City in a trance and just like holding them hostage. Ooh, that was well done. And then there's a lot of Frank Castle in this. As someone who has not watched The Punisher, Daredevil, any of those things, I know John Bernthal from The Walking Dead is Shane, so I've just seen him come be a zombie, basically. But I think he was pretty good in this. Again, I don't know the Punisher character at all. I just know he's like a hard ass, basically. And apparently he and Spider-Man have this little similar thing going on where they both have lost their families essentially. Who hasn't lost their family at this point in the MCU? Like, who has an intact family? Who's doing okay? Show of hands? Anyone doing okay? No? Okay, I thought so. But their chemistry of like big brother, little brother was really good. I enjoyed that. This movie is a sneaky cry movie. Like, I cried multiple times during this film. What? I cried multiple times. The one that really got me was the end scene when Peter finally decides to introduce himself to Ned, because up until that point he did have to tell MJ that MJ found the letter, and she was like, and she confronted him and was like, I'm so sorry, but I don't love you. That was another brutal scene. Oh my God. Talk about like 1-2 punch. This movie's trying to kill you. Trying to take you out over here. But when she had to be like, I'm so sorry. Maybe if you had like talked to me before, but like, thank you for saving my life and thank you for what the sacrifice that you made for MJ, but I'm not the MJ you know, and I don't love you. That was brutal. That was brutal. That, I felt like I got broken up with. My God, that was awful. So she now knows the secret ish. But like knowing that Peter Parker is Spider-Man doesn't mean anything if you don't know who Peter Parker is, you know? So she now knows the secret and she's like, you should tell Ned about this. Like, he can handle it. And there's like a little scene where Peter Parker comes in as Spider-Man into their home and their shared apartment and they're like talking and playing Legos. And I teared up at that scene. But that's just to preface you for the end scene where he does go up to Ned and say, "Hi, we met at the party. My name is Peter." And then they do their he like shakes his hand, but then they start slowly going into that handshake that they have. I was full on sobbing. I was sobbing in the theater. That was so good. Sobbing. The other scene that got me was, so Jean Grey can't really get into Peter Parker's mind, or at least not well. I think it has to do with his spider abilities and enhanced senses. I think that kind of stops people from being able to get into his mind well. Again, I already prefaced this. I'm not a Marvel nerd. I just know what's put in front of me in these movies if I choose to watch them. So that's just my guess. So she tries to get into his mind, but the only thing she's ever able to see in his mind before she gets kicked out is him talking to Aunt May and her saying, like, yeah, I know things are being rough. You've had a lot of changes thrown out at you, but something about being special and how the people who love you will love you in spite, like, despite this, like, this will just be cherry on top, like the people who love you will love you for who you are and not just because you're special. And for Jean Grey, someone who has been abandoned by her parents and who has had her sister taken away from her, she also has no one. And in the final scene, Peter is able to kind of like flip it and make it so that Jean is the one hearing this special talk from Aunt May and getting hugged. And that was so sad and so heartbreaking. And that was the way he was able to kind of like, not defeat her, but like subdue her enough so she doesn't, kill the DODC guy. Rightfully, though, like, she would have been well within her right to murder that man. He was a bad guy. Then after that, Frank immediately tries to shoot Jean, and Peter saves her and in turn gets shot. And it was sad. That was also sad. But then seeing all of New York like rally around Spider-Man, oh my God. There's something about New York rallying around Spider-Man that's always so good. That's why the second Sam Raimi Spider-Man is like one of the best ones. There was just something in general about Peter struggling with his power that is just, any scene where he's like trying to shoot his webs and is like everything's going haywire. There was a scene where he was fighting the Scorpion and the Scorpion gets possessed by Jean Grey, and then Peter kind of like goes over into his like arachnid mode and just goes way too hard, and like it's almost like he's possessed by the changes in his body. That was good. Anytime Peter and his powers are just not together and in sync, it's so good. That's pretty much my thoughts on the movie. So we're going to kind of take this last little bit to talk about the MCU in general and what I'm going to do to prepare for Avengers Doomsday. So Doomsday comes out December 18th. It is in my calendar. I will for sure see it. I'm one of those people who understands that Doctor Doom, being played by Robert Downey Jr., is just a cheap ploy to sell tickets and like, hey, you got my ticket. Like, good job, guys. Your cheap ploy worked. I'm cheap in that way. Sure. I know some people have problems with the casting for ethnic reasons and how Robert Downey Jr. is not the same ethnicity as Doctor Doom. I know some people have issues with it because he was Tony Stark Iron Man, and it's like, what? What are we doing with this timeline? Like, the timeline already doesn't make any sense. Again, for me, I understand this is a cheap trick. Cheapest trick. Like, I'm there, guys. I'm gonna see it. I'm excited. The thing that's different about Doomsday to Endgame, I guess, and Infinity War is I feel as though nothing is connected right now. It's very odd. Like, I feel as though when the first three, four phases of Marvel were going on in that wonderful, sweet time pre COVID, the movies were coming out, they were must sees. You were getting like little Easter eggs within the film that alluded to comic things, which, delighted the hearts of the comic book nerds. But also, you got little Easter eggs that could allude to what was coming for Infinity War and that whole saga. And they still felt connected. And characters were either close to meeting each other or at least knew of each other in a very tangible way that we were like seeing on screen. It just felt like it felt like a really big buildup. For Doomsday, I am not getting that vibe as much as the Infinity War saga. I almost think there's too much going on for me to possibly be caught up. Like, after Endgame, when Marvel started doing their shows on Disney Plus, I was excited. I did watch a couple of them. I had seen WandaVision like everybody else. I saw Falcon and Winter Soldier. That was supreme. That's an underrated one. That's an underrated one. I saw Loki, of course. And then uh, there's just so many characters, and I feel as though, again, I don't feel as though they're connected. Um we've got so where I'm caught up here after the Endgame saga, I feel as though the pressure was almost off because there was the whole Jonathan Majors thing where Kang was just scrapped because of his legal things and who he is as a person. So we kind of lost that, and I think they kind of would have been building to something with that, but having that leave so abruptly just really messed up some of their flow. Um, there are a lot of shows I do still want to watch. Like Wonder Woman seems exciting. There's the one with Oscar Isaac that the name of it I can't think of. I still do need to see Loki season 2. Um, I didn't watch the later seasons of What If, but I really remember enjoying that series. That was another good one. I have seen Thor. I've seen Captain America Brave New World. I saw the Thunderbolts slash New Avengers. Obviously, I saw Spider-Man Brand New Day. And I saw Fantastic Four. Did I say that already? I saw Fantastic Four. But again, even in setting these up, I feel as though they're not that connected. When I think of the stinger scene of Thor, Love, and Thunder, their main plot was a guy who eats gods or destroys gods. He's the god destroyer, and Jane has cancer or something like that, and Thor powers, and I'm pretty sure she dies. But their stinger scene was teasing Brett Goldstein as Hercules. And if you watch this channel, you know I love Brett Goldstein. Ted Lasso is one of my favorite shows. I have a saint candle of him that my best friend got me. That's in the background of my makeup videos. That's a little Easter egg for you. That was teased at the end of that. And I think they also teased a little bit of Venom in one of the stinger scenes as well. So that's not connected to Doctor Doom. the end of Captain America Brave New World, they kind of have a little stinger scene where they talk to Sam about how there's a multi-dimensional big bad coming, like a threat coming. That's where we're starting to see a little bit of it, but I don't know. I feel as though Doom, you know, I feel as though by this point in time in the Infinity Saga, we had already seen Thanos saying, "Fine, I'll just do it myself," after he had sent people to complete his mission of getting the Infinity Stones. I feel as though we already had that by this point. And right now, the big players who are all supposed to go against Doctor Doom, they don't know each other. There is Sam and Captain America, and he knows Bucky, but he doesn't seem to have a relationship with the New Avengers. There was a stinger scene where apparently he and the New Avengers are fighting over the name Avengers because Sam is Captain America, and obviously they're the Avengers, and the New Avengers are the kind of like Suicide Squad of like former evil assassins and whatnot. So, but again, the two have not met on screen. They know of each other, but what? And then with the whole Fantastic Four thing of it, because I know Doctor Doom is a Fantastic Four villain, even at the end of their movie, we do know that they kind of get caught inside the earth that we're in right now, the dimension that we're in right now. We know they get caught because that's a stinger scene for the Thunderbolts. But the stinger scene for the Fantastic Four is Doctor Doom being in front of baby Franklin. And somehow he's there. But like, I don't know. They just don't feel that connected to me just yet. But almost as though they're focusing more on Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, and Robert Downey Jr., the big three from the first couple phases of Marvel who made it so successful. They're focusing on them more instead of these new people that you've brought in. They've brought in so many people, and we still don't know where Doctor Strange is. After Multiverse of Madness, he has his like little third eye come up and he goes with Charlize Theron? He goes off with someone, has a third eye, and they're like, Doctor Strange will return. What? It feels like we have so many people and it should be so epic that all these people are coming together, but they're kind of off in their own little worlds, and I don't know what's going on with all of them. Almost like not that they bit off more than they can chew, because in all honesty, a lot of the Marvel projects are pretty good for what they are. Some of them are a little bit more exceptional than others. Like WandaVision was definitely a standout. To me, Loki was also a standout. So was Captain America. Or sorry, so was Falcon and Winter Soldier. To me, those were a little bit of standouts where I just was like, I have to see this. I have to see what's going on. And I just liked the everything that they incorporated into it. But there's just so much that you have to, or I don't know if you have to, but that you need to be caught up on. And it almost feels daunting. It feels daunting. I know when it was like, get ready for Infinity War, there wasn't that much you had to catch up on, honestly. Black Panther. I saw Black Panther 2 as well. We saw a little bit of the Napor and Shuri. We saw a little bit of them and how they might have an alliance, and we see a little bit of them in the trailer. What? What? We did also see a little bit of the Warriors in Black Panther in Falcon and Winter Soldier because they came from Bucky's arm. That was pretty sweet. But you get what I mean, where it all feels a little bit like you're about to take an AP US history test or something like that in 2 days, and the teacher has let you all kind of just watch movies in class instead of teaching you the actual material and being like, okay, this is how we're gonna get those fives in this test. You know what I mean? So how am I gonna prepare for this? I think there are a couple Marvel projects that I really do want to see, and I will make sure I see before Doomsday. One of those is Loki season 2. Absolutely loved Loki. I really do need to see the second season. That is my bad. While I'm on the topic, might as well see the Marvels. Why not? Um I do want to see Wonder Man. I really want to see that one. That one's the one about the guy who's an actor of a superhero, I want to say. That seemed fascinating. Apparently, it got canceled after one season, which is a bummer because it looked like a very interesting premise. So, that one I definitely want to see. Are there any other movies I want to see? I think the movies might be a bonus. Moon Knight. That was the Oscar Isaac one I was thinking of. My memory. She's elite. So, Moon Knight. I do eventually want to see that because Oscar Isaac is like Oscar Isaac. So, I do kind of want to see that. That's going to be kind of like, we'll put it off to the side. I don't know if I'm going to do it or not, but maybe if the timing is right. I'm not sure that plays into it. There's so many things you don't know what plays into it anymore. And there's so much to keep up with that it kind of came down to, at least in this phase after Endgame, it kind of just came down to my personal preference of what I wanted to watch. And obviously, that's how movies and TV and film is anyway. Like, you just watch what you want to watch. But I feel as though pre Infinity War, it was a lot easier to keep up and just kind of like immediately and watch everything. It was a lot easier. Now, not so much. I'll also probably rewatch Fantastic Four. I love when things are stylized for a 60s future. Just because the idea of the future that was in the 60s is so vastly different than the future now. It's so interesting to see. I like how stylized that is. And that was a good Fantastic Four. Granted, I'm someone who used to watch the Chris Evans as Human Torch Fantastic Fours. Like, I've seen those movies so many times. What can I say? Chris Evans girl. Was obsessed with him. I watched those like crappy movies into the ground, man. But I like this new Fantastic Four. And I'll probably rewatch it mostly for the Stinger scene and to kind of like, I think they're going to be the inciting incident of all of this. Them being in a dimension that's not their own with their crazy baby that sometimes looks like CGI. And that was the weird part of Fantastic Four. Their baby looked like CGI a lot of the time. But that said, I've been talking for a very long time. And I'm probably going to keep a lot of this in, unfortunately. So I gotta cap it. I gotta cap it. But I'll see you next time I have something else to talk about. Bye.